The moon hung low over the Sierra Nevada, casting an ethereal silver glow on the snow-capped peaks that jutted like jagged teeth from the Earth's crust. At 10,000 feet, the air was razor-thin, each breath a labored gasp in the frigid night. Inside the Bell UH-1Y Venom helicopter, stolen from a black market arms dealer, the rotors chopped relentlessly, a rhythmic thunder that drowned out all but the most shouted words. Captain Alara Voss stood in the open cargo bay, her wrists bound tightly with industrial zip ties that bit into her skin, drawing thin lines of blood. She was no stranger to pain. Her body bore the map of a dozen covert operations, bullet scars from Kandahar, knife wounds from the jungles of Colombia, and a fractured rib from her last stint in Syria that still ached on cold nights like this. Alara's captors were a motley crew of rogue operatives, former special forces turned mercenaries for a shadowy cartel that trafficked everything from fentanyl to human lives across the border. Their leader, a burly man with a scarred face and a thick Eastern European accent, known only as Victor, loomed over her, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey and stale cigarettes. He wore tactical gear pilfered from various militaries, a patchwork of camouflage that screamed amateur hour to Alara's trained eye. "You Rangers," Victor snarled, his voice a gravelly rumble barely cutting through the engine's roar, "you think you're gods among men. Invincible. But up here, gravity is the great equalizer. It doesn't give a damn about your badges or your medals." Alara's mind was a whirlwind, piecing together the fragments of how she'd ended up here. She'd gone deep undercover 6 months ago, posing as a disillusioned defector from the U.S. Army Rangers, feeding intel to dismantle the cartel's smuggling ring that funneled weapons and drugs through these very mountains. It had been flawless, until the midnight raid on their hidden warehouse. A double agent within her own support team had tipped them off. She'd fought like hell, taking down 3 guards with improvised weapons before they overwhelmed her. Now, stripped of her gear except for the tactical vest she wore under her jacket, she faced the abyss. The side door of the helicopter slid open with a mechanical groan, revealing a vertigo-inducing drop. Below, the landscape was a black void punctuated by faint outlines of pine forests and rocky outcrops, thousands of feet down. The wind howled in, whipping Alara's dark hair across her face, stinging her eyes. 2 of Victor's goons flanked her, their grips iron on her arms as they shoved her toward the edge. "No parachute for traitors like you," one of them laughed, a wiry man with a tattoo of a skull on his neck. "Just a long fall and a hard stop." Alara didn't flinch. Instead, she locked eyes with Victor, her green gaze steady and unyielding. A faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips, born not from fear but from the knowledge they lacked. She'd survived worse, free falls in training without full gear, wilderness evasions where death was a constant companion. Her file, if they'd bothered to hack it properly, detailed her expertise in high altitude, low opening jumps, survival tactics that turned the impossible into routine. "You really should have checked my file," she said calmly, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "Rangers don't die easy." Victor's sneer faltered for a split second, but he recovered, nodding to his men. With a final, brutal push, they hurled her out into the night. Alara tumbled into the void, the rush of air deafening as she plummeted headfirst. The helicopter banked sharply away, its lights shrinking to pinpricks against the starry sky, the crew laughing in triumph, certain of her splattered end on the rocks below. But as the ground rushed up, Alara's training surged to life. She twisted her body midair, angling for control in the chaos of freefall, her mind already plotting survival in the unforgiving wilderness that awaited. The wind screamed in Alara's ears as she hurtled toward the earth, her body slicing through the icy air like a human projectile. At terminal velocity, around 120 miles per hour, she had mere seconds to act. Twisting her torso with the precision drilled into her during Ranger School's brutal airborne training, she flattened her profile to slow her descent slightly, buying precious time. Her eyes scanned the rapidly approaching terrain, a dense thicket of Jeffrey pines clinging to the rugged slopes of the Sierra Nevada, their branches a potential lifeline amidst the unforgiving granite boulders below. No parachute, fine. Improvise, adapt, overcome, that was the Ranger creed etched into her soul. She angled her fall toward the thickest canopy, arms tucked to her sides until the last moment. Impact hit like a freight train. The first branches whipped across her face, drawing blood, but they broke her speed. She crashed through layer after layer, needles stinging, wood splintering with cracks like gunfire. Her tactical vest absorbed some shocks, its concealed pouches holding survival essentials, a multi-tool, paracord, a compact first aid kit, and a hidden GPS beacon she'd activated mid-fall. Finally, she slammed into the soft duff of the forest floor in an explosion of pine scent and dirt, rolling instinctively to dissipate the force. Pain exploded in her left ankle, a sprain, maybe a fracture, but she was alive, breathing raggedly in the moonlit underbrush. Above, the helicopter's distant thrum grew louder as it circled back, its spotlight sweeping the treetops like a predator's gaze. Victor and his crew were confirming the kill, laughing no doubt at the invincible Ranger's presumed pancake fate. Alara gritted her teeth, ignoring the fire in her limbs. She ripped free from the zip ties using a jagged rock, old trick from Sarah training, and assessed her situation. Bruised ribs, lacerations, but no internal bleeding she could detect. Moving silently, she fashioned a quick splint for her ankle from branches and paracord, then melted into the shadows, heading upslope toward a rocky ridge that offered vantage. The chopper hovered low now, its downdraft rustling leaves as the beam probed the crash site. Alara's smile returned, cold and calculated. From her kit, she uncoiled more paracord, tying a makeshift grappling hook with her multi-tools hook end and a weighted stone. Years of rock climbing in the Rangers had honed her for this. As the bird dipped closer, she launched a line with unerring accuracy. It snagged the landing skid with a metallic clink, lost in the rotor noise. Hand over hand, she hauled herself up, muscles screaming but unyielding, swinging aboard through the open door like a ghost from the grave. The first goon never saw her coming, a chokehold from behind, silent and swift, his body slumped. The second turned at the thud, but Alara's elbow cracked his jaw, followed by a knee to the groin. Victor, at the controls, whirled in panic, fumbling for his sidearm. Too late, she disarmed him with a wrist lock, slamming his head against the console. Rangers don't need parachutes, she hissed, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surge. We improvise. Forcing the yoke forward, she sent the chopper into a controlled nosedive toward the cartel's hidden base, a cluster of camouflaged tents and vehicles nestled in a valley 5 miles out, intel she'd gleaned undercover. Alarms blared as the ground rushed up. Victor begged, but Alara was deaf to pleas. At the last second, she yanked a real parachute from the emergency rack, irony noted, and bailed out, deploying it with a whoosh. The helicopter plowed into the base in a fireball, erasing evidence and enemies alike. Floating down, Alara activated her beacon for extraction. The cartel had learned the hard way. Survival wasn't luck, it was preparation, grit, and the unbreakable will of a ranger. As dawn crested the peaks, she vanished into the wilderness, mission accomplished, legend intact.